Welcome to the video tutorial on how to configure PageGate to pull information from a web API. In this tutorial, we'll be going over how to use GET or POST methods to pull information from a web API, then pass it through a filter script for processing. Before we begin, to have PageGate pull information from a web API, you will need the Cadascy interface and the filter script. Effectively, we're going to have PageGate pass a GET or POST statement to a web API to retrieve information, but once it has the data, it needs to be told how to format it and what to do with it. That's where Cadascy and the filter script come in. They tell the program how to format and what to do with the data it retrieves. With the HTTP GET and HTTP POST protocols, you can pull information from any web API that supports the GET or POST methods. For example, if you have a web resource that provides XML content, you can configure PageGate to pull for that XML content, and then feed it through a filter pack to turn it into a readable text message. Alternatively, you could pull the XML content and then pass it completely intact to its destination. In the example I'm going to take you through, we're going to configure PageGate to automatically pull the National Weather Service for weather information. When we're finished, anytime a message is created for the check weather recipient, PageGate will request the current weather data from the National Weather Service and send that information as a text message to the recipients and groups specified in the filter script's configuration. The first step is to open the PageGate admin. I've configured this copy of PageGate to send SMS, and, naturally, you would need to do the same if you want this information to be delivered as a text message. For more information on how to do that, have a look at how PageGate sends SMS in our video tutorials section. Next, right-click Carriers and select Add. Give the carrier a name, something straightforward like weather or NOAA. Set the protocol to HTTP GET. Set the host to your web API's URL. In this example, we're going to be using the National Weather Service's web API. For example, you could use this to get the weather for Boston Logan International Airport. For more information on the National Weather Service's web API and XML feeds, have a look at their website. Set the port to 80. Left-click Apply to add the carrier to the list. Now that we've created the basic carrier to pull the web API, we'll need to tell PageGate what recipient should receive the information. To do so, go into the Template subsection of your new carrier. In the Settings section, specify the following: response recipient equals weather-response. This is case sensitive, so be sure to use capital R and capital R. When finished, click Apply. Now we'll need to create a file carrier to pass the web API information to PageGate's Cadascy interface and filter pack for processing. In Windows, create a directory for PageGate's message processing to reference. This can be any folder accessible to PageGate, whether on the local hard drive or by UNC path to a network resource. However, if PageGate will need to reference a network resource, the services relevant to these processes will need permission to access it. For more information, see the Services section of our documentation. We recommend creating a directory called Response as a subdirectory of PageGate's data directory. By default, /PageGate data/response. Next, go back into the PageGate admin, then right-click Carriers and select Add. Give the carrier name, something straightforward like Weather Responses or NWS Translation. Set the protocol to File. Set file path to the directory you just created. By default, /PageGate data/response. Set extension to .txt. Set max characters to 2000. When finished, click Apply. Now we'll need to create a recipient tied to the file carrier. To do so, right-click Recipients and select Add. Give the recipient a name, something straightforward like Weather Response, weather-response. Set type to normal. Set carrier to the file protocol carrier you just created. By default, weather-responses. Leave ID/pin blank. set max characters to 2000. When finished, click Apply. Now that we've told PageGate what web API to pull information from and configured the translation system, we'll need to configure the Cadascy interface to look for this data. In the PageGate admin, go to Interfaces, Cadascy, Settings. If you already have a polling directory specified, you can skip this step. If you do not have a polling directory specified, we would recommend creating ASCII as a subdirectory of your PageGate data folder and specifying that. By default, /PageGate data /ASCII. Now go to Interfaces, Cadascy, Settings, Advanced Polling, Files. Click Add. Set recipient to *. Leave the From field blank. Set Files to star.txt. In the path, specify the folder that the web API information will be written to. By default, /PageGate data /response. Set file type to standard. Click Apply, then click Apply again. Now we'll need to configure a filter script to remove the XML tags from the data before we send it as an SMS. To do so, you'll first need to copy pgfilter.exe, pgfilter.xml, and preproc.bat into the directory you want created for the weather responses. By default, you would copy these files into the /PageGate data /response folder. Next, we'll need to edit the pgfilter.xml file to configure the script itself. In this specific example, we've configured the filter script to remove all content not related to the weather tag in the National Weather Service's XML output, strip out the XML tags from the text to be sent, and send all of the information to a specific group of recipients. However, it's important to note that this is just an example of what can be done, and that all of PageGate's recipient types and communication methods, both input and output, can be called on and used. For the specific code reference here, have a look at Example 4 in the Complete Script Examples section of PageGate's documentation. Once you've finished configuring your filter, save and close pgfilter.xml. The final step is to configure a recipient that will initiate the web API poll when prompted. To do so, right-click Recipients and select Add. Give the recipient a name, something straightforward like Check Weather. Set Type to Normal. Set Carrier to the web API polling carrier you created earlier. By default, NOAA. In ID/PIN, enter 123. Set max characters to 2000. When finished, click Apply. Once you finish this configuration, anytime a message is created for the Check Weather recipient, the program will perform the necessary request to pull the current weather data from the National Weather Service's web API. Then send that information as a text message to the recipients and groups specified in the filter pack's configuration. As an added bonus, if you have the PageGate client, you can configure a scheduled message to go to the weather check recipient at a specified interval. So you could configure the program to check and broadcast the weather every hour, day, week, month, or at any other timescale you prefer. It's also important to note that you can configure as many carriers to check as many web APIs as you may need, and have all output fed through the same filter script. This concludes the video tutorial on how to configure PageGate to pull information from a web API. For more information, including a detailed overview of PageGate's filter pack, please visit our website, www.notepage.net.